They say that Iron Man is the Batman of the MCU, using his limitless wealth, superior intellect, and advanced tech to help him save the world and its citizens. While the two vary greatly in terms of personality, the two can be quite distrusting, which makes us beg the question, how similar is Iron Man to Batman? More specifically, does he have plans to neutralize his fellow heroes, and what would those plans look like? Well, my Marvel lovers, it's time to dive deep into the mind of Tony Stark so we can find or even create an Avengers contingency plan. My name is Callum, and today I'm joined by my marvelous compadre, Zach. How you doing, bud? Do you think Tony Stark is the kind of guy to label his snacks in the fridge?
Not only is Tony Stark the kind of guy to label his snacks in the fridge, but he's also the kind to, if he catches his daughter taking them, probably scold her for it, put her in the corner and say, listen here, you've got to discover your own element on the periodic table if you want your own snacks, all right?
Parenting tips from Tony Stark. Right, let's get right into it. So let's imagine a 1v1 scenario between Iron Man and a couple of different heroes. Would he even need a pre-established plan to effectively take out some of his Avengers teammates? Let's try Iron Man versus Thor.
So despite Tony showing that he's adapted to Thor's lightning abilities, he's still, physically stronger, Thor that is, and more durable than Iron Man. Unless Iron Man could outsmart him, I'm not really sure how he'd beat him. I'm pretty sure Thor would probably win that fight.
Yeah, 1v1. No prep time. I say that logic is the same with other overpowered Avengers like the Hulk, Vision, maybe Scarlet Witch. These are like god-level power heroes, right? A lot of characters would have a hard time fighting these guys. Ant-Man is also a maybe.
Yeah, it kind of just depends on if Tony Stark is able to flush him out of his suit and into a toilet and then, or stomp on him before Scott Lang can do any serious damage to his suit.
Okay, Zach, I know Spider-Man is your favorite Marvel hero. How do you think Iron Man would fare against Tom Holland's Far From Home Spider-Man? No prep time.
Okay, well, I think Tom Holland's Spider-Man post Far From Home would maybe actually take that win. Mostly because, especially by the end of Far From Home, his abilities are a lot more fine-tuned. He's kind of mastered how his suit works. He's really gotten the hang of his spider sense. I know at the beginning of Far From Home, he's really struggling with it, but by the end, that's what he ultimately uses to defeat Mysterio. I think this Spider-Man is significantly stronger than Iron Man, and I think his techniques and abilities would allow him to maybe gain the upper hand and overall take the fight. But from the MCU perspective, MCU's Iron Man is a very, very solid version of the character. He knows his armor and his work in and out. He's got a lot of combat experience, way more than this version of Spider-Man has. And plus side, he built this Spider-Man suit. Now, yes, you could argue that the Far From Home suit, the red and black one, was built by Peter himself, but that was all using Stark tech. So
Tony could just pull out a TV remote and turn it off, and Peter's like, oh, I can't do anything anymore.
Yeah, you're in timeout, kiddo. No Spider-Manning for you for the rest of the day. Go eat your green beans and sit in silence.
But I would think he would probably win against like Hawkeye, Black Widow, maybe Captain America, Falcon, War Machine. I mean, that's just because he's smarter than Rhodey and he has access to more suits. Just in the same way that he's probably got a failsafe for Peter's suit, he's probably got a failsafe for Rhodey's suit. With a lot more of the level bouts, with more specialized but not superhuman heroes, it really comes down to Tony being able to outsmart them. In the MCU, we've seen Iron Man face off against fellow heroes, and it mostly comes down to how quickly Tony can adapt to the situation. When he faces Thor in Avengers Assemble, it's sort of even, but I get the feeling like Thor was kind of holding back. He just needs to place Mjolnir on top of Tony and, that's him done. When he's facing Steve during Civil War, he's actually in a really weakened state. He has to get his AI to analyze Steve's fight pattern so he can stand a chance in hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah, and the same extends to his other battles. What it comes down to is what he's faced before.
By the end of Endgame, we've seen around 42 different versions of the MCU Iron Man suit, and that's from Mark 1 all the way up to the nanobot suit he used against Thanos, and that's including stuff from the Iron Legion. This is just the MCU. So we've established that Tony could hold his own against some of the other superheroes, and we've seen that in countless MCU movies. But the biggest argument about whether or not he could take on any character usually comes down to the same old reason that Batman fans think he could win every fight.
It kind of just comes down to who's smarter, who has more resources, and any outside influences during the actual confrontation.
Every single time time that Tony has faced a new enemy in the MCU, he would update his suits with countermeasures to that specific threat, even if that's other Avengers.
Yeah.
Things like the Hulkbuster for the Hulk and Ultron, electricity absorption and conversion for Thor and Endgame, and he also kind of copied Black Panther's morphing suit tech.
So he's learned from every battle he's been in. But taking it back to the Batman comparison, is he as paranoid as Batman?
Okay, well, let's establish why Tony would be the one in the MCU to create an anti-Avengers protocol. I mean, he's a wild card. He does things behind people's back because he doesn't even like relying on others. That's how Ultron was created.
Yeah, but it's not exactly because he doesn't think the others aren't capable. It's more he wanted to create something that he could control because he felt he was solely responsible for the safety of Earth.
We've also seen in the movies he has leaned on controlling the Avengers. Like, he was on the side of the Sokovia Accords to a point. He viewed the Avengers as potentially dangerous and needed to be held accountable. But this doesn't even have to be a result of not trusting the other Avengers. MCU Tony's got too much of an ego for that, and he would never think as far as someone else needing to take him down. But would he prep ways to nullify other superheroes he views as a threat? Absolutely.
You can't take the Hulkbuster as an example of that, though, because when Tony made it, Bruce actually agreed to thinking up ways to restrain the Hulk because he was afraid of him at the time.
Yeah, does Tony think that one day his teammates might turn against him? Maybe. Not entirely, but he might have thought of ways of facing the others if they were, let's say, taken over by the Mind Stone or Wanda. I'm sure Wanda being inside his head could have made him paranoid enough to think he might have to knock out his fellow Avengers.
We've seen Wanda in his head before, and he sure did not like what he saw.
Not at all. Okay, so this is where we get down to the nitty-gritty. What would a contingency plan look like for the Avengers if they were prepared in the first place? Let's go through each of the Avengers from around Infinity War and find out what their weaknesses are. So off the top of your head, how would you beat Hawkeye?
Well, Hawkeye's strength lies in his ingenuity and ability to stay far away from his opponents. He's a pretty easy one. Break one of his arms, and he can't use his main weapon.
Yeah.
Plus, we've seen him try to fight Vision, and he's not the most OP of Avengers when it comes to up close and personal. I mean, the guy can hold his own in a physical fight, sure, but when he's put up against someone with enhanced strength, whether it's from super soldier serums, gamma radiation, or a lot of money, it's not much of a fight after that point.
But Black Widow is the opposite of Hawkeye. You'd need to take her out from a distance because it's her athletic ability and sneakiness which could get the better of you.
Yeah, realistically, trapping Black Widow and then taking her out without you being present is probably the only way you could win against her.
Yeah, something like the Iron Legion or something. Steve Rogers, Captain America.
Okay, this is a difficult one because he's very experienced combat-wise. Like, he thinks tactically. Even if you catch him by surprise, if you try to overpower him, Steve will probably think and then dodge his way out of it.
Yeah. His selflessness is his only obvious weakness. Taking hostages is the only way you could exploit that. So if you can find a way to imprison him to save lives, that's probably how you could nullify him, you know? Make him sacrifice for the greater good.
Yeah. Okay, well, how about Steve's favorite left-winger, Falcon?
Sam is an experienced soldier, sure, but if you're looking to render his abilities, a good EMP might do the trick. Then it's just a matter of taking him out from a distance, you know?
Okay, what about James Rhodes, War Machine?
So Tony built War Machine, so surely the War Machine armor couldn't be taken out by just a simple EMP. He could know how to disable or hack the armor, especially after he discovered other people can steal the armor in Iron Man 2.
Yeah, if that wasn't possible, it might be a matter of just wearing them down. The suit's got to charge sometime, and it may not run on AA batteries, but, you know, Rhodey's got to get some juice. He's got to charge his suit, plug it into the wall. He's got a little micro USB. It goes right up the button. It makes the little iPhone charge sound effect, and you're just like, all right.
Yeah, and even if that wasn't enough because the suit was, I don't know, solar powered, you might just have to get him while he's not in his armor.
Kick him 1 or 2 times in his broken leg. That dude's gonna go down like it's nothing.
Okay, what about Ant-Man? Scott Lang is pretty intuitive when it comes to battle. It's his unpredictability which has really made him an interesting foe to fight. Really, his only main weakness weakness is how long he can keep going.
We've obviously heard that if he's in his large form long enough, he might collapse or faint. In terms of the insects, if there was a way to jam his communication device, you might be able to eliminate any of his backup. Taking his daughter hostage might get him to do what you want, but you got to be aware he'll probably use the Pym particles to weasel his way out of the situation with his daughter intact.
Okay, big one here. The Hulk. The Avengers invented ways to incapacitate the Hulk before Endgame. You either hit him hard enough, hypnotize him, or get Natasha to sing him a lullaby. But it gets even more complicated if, let's say, you're facing off against Smart Hulk. Not only is he invulnerable with an incredible healing factor, but also he knows his 1, 2, 3s. That's a recipe for disaster. You could try and get at his MCU self's ego to make him do something without thinking, but realistically, mind control seems like the safest option if you can't get him when he's in his human form, you know?
Now, Thor, God of Thunder and man with the goldenest of locks. It's not as simple as removing his weapon, mostly because he's like the only one who can hold the thing, but also because he has a huge amount of power as the God of Thunder. He might not crack your skull with Mjolnir or chop your head off with Stormbreaker, but he'll definitely fry you with some good old-fashioned electricity.
Yeah.
You don't want that.
But the thing is he's not invincible. But I'm not sure how Tony would be able to get a killing blow on him because he is very, very durable. I remember like the only time he's properly been hurt is by other magical opponents like his sister Hela or even the Hulk. Like with Thor, you really would just have to trap him. His ego is harmed very easily. Like make him feel insecure and he'll charge in without thinking.
Yeah, I mean, you see it in the first Avengers movie. He's trapped in that big old cage that Loki was in. But also, if you could teleport him to somewhere infinite, like the place Loki is transported while Thor's speaking to Doctor Strange in Thor Ragnarok, you might be able to get rid of him. So Tony's equivalent of that might be knocking him out, locking him in a spaceship, and sending him to some random planet with no life or way out of it.
Yeah. Okay. Spider-Man. He's only really an Avenger during Infinity War and Endgame. But Zach, how do you think you could neutralize the Spidey boy?
Well, I mean, you could probably just bully him. He's like, what, 7? I don't know. In all seriousness, Peter's spider sense can be disrupted in the comics. Also, the Spider Slayers, which were basically robots created by Dr. Octopus, tended to use this chemical called ethyl chloride, which seemed to really mess him up. But in terms of MCU Tom Holland, obviously there's no Doc Ock with Spider Slayers, at least not yet. Spider-Man No Way Home. But that also doesn't say that Tony couldn't create something like that.
As we mentioned earlier, Tony probably has a failsafe or two within those things. Not just for the fact that he's like, oh, this teenager's gonna suddenly turn against me and usurp my company, but probably is if he's like, okay, if someone else gets their hands on this suit or someone hacks into this suit, I have to have a way to turn it off. So, okay, what about pre-WandaVision Vision?
Okay, well, Vision is a huge problem because he's a synthezoid robot that can phase through anything you throw at him.
Yeah, here's the weird thing, right? In Avengers number 62 of the comics, despite having a mechanical brain, he's knocked out by the same drug that knocks out Black Panther, Hawkeye, and Black Knight. In the MCU, we're not sure if this is the same. I mean, the comics were a bit wild, but it would be a bit weird if he could be knocked out by drugs, right?
I think the closest we get to something like that is in WandaVision. There's this gag where like he swallows some gum and that messes with his he starts acting all drunk or something because it like they display it visually with a representing it with like gears getting stuck on the gum. So like that's the most, I don't know, maybe give him some Trident and just stuff it down his throat. That could weaken him. It seems the only moments he makes mistakes is when someone hurts Wanda, someone he cares deeply for. We've also seen that he's been temporarily paralyzed due to an electric field Hawkeye used when freeing Wanda during the Civil War. So it seems he can be surprised, but can quickly adapt to any situation.
Yeah, I think the main thing about Vision is that you need to distract him. All of his major abilities require concentration on one thing. Like he hasn't been able to phase shift and then also use his beam from his headstone at the same time.
Yeah.
The only way you could defeat him is if you were able to paralyze him long enough to remove his mechanical brain like Thanos did in Infinity War. You make up a concoction there of hostages, electric fields and a quick head smashing, you might have yourself there a plan. So what about Scarlet Witch? So the extent of Wanda's powers are far-reaching, and we know that she can get tired for a while after using them.
Yeah, again, they really showcase more of that in WandaVision. It takes a lot to construct the city of Westview. It's pretty insane. But in a battle with her, you'd hope to not face her when she knows of your presence, because she could easily mess with your mind, and then you're kind of finished after that once she gets in there.
Yeah, you're donezo. If you can hypnotize her, though, triggering her fragile mental state, you could send her into shock and hiding. But really, you'd want to kill her without her knowing as quickly as possible. If we're talking Tony, maybe just paralyze her and then finish her off.
Yeah, to be honest, you could just throw her into her own reality, like in WandaVision. That's her sword. Just make sure no one bugs her.
Yeah, exactly.
Could Tony adapt to all these weaknesses?
Sure, he could put up a fight if he needs to, but would he plan all these different countermeasures?
Potentially. Would he be able to pull them off in the MCU? Not entirely sure, because he's super dead. We won't find out. Tony is a very emotional guy. He will probably snap at people and then fight them rather than planning all the way through. But if he was to try to formulate plans, I'm sure he could use any of the methods we've mentioned to try and off his fellow heroes.
Probably have to tick him off pretty hard for him to go super psycho and try to kill all the Avengers. What could they do to really piss off Tony Stark?
I'll probably call him the least attractive Avenger.
Oh my god. So what does this all mean then for the MCU? Would something like this come into play in the future? Like an anti-Avengers plot?
Well, now that the main cast of Avengers, Tony Stark included, are no more, it's unlikely Stark is going to rise from the grave just to laugh in his shocked friends' faces about how he could have killed them. And there's really no one at the moment who could pull off something like what we've described. Doctor Strange probably has the closest thing to Tony's resources in terms of his magical abilities, that he could do something similar to what we've theorized.
Yeah, I mean, the only other character who is probably paranoid enough to do something like this is Nick Fury. Despite being the one who created the Avengers Initiative in the first place, he's the plan guy of the MCU. He's the guy who brings the teams together and then thinks about the bigger picture. I'm sure it's crossed Fury's mind what would happen if Banner, Thor, or any of the other Avengers became his enemies.
An anti-Avengers initiative.
Look at this guy.
Yeah, if Tony tried to take out Fury probably has contingencies based on what he thinks are Tony's contingencies. It would be like a very intense chess match.
So arguably an anti-Avengers plot, similar to what we've seen in the animated DC movie Justice League Doom, is possible and could originate from emergency plans made by, I don't know, Tony Stark or Nick Fury. But I have a theory. And it's one we've talked about in past episodes about how Iron Man will still have a presence in the MCU. I believe that Tony would have worked on something that other characters might not find is in the best taste. Either it's against other characters' interests, or it's actual countermeasures against specific characters. Regardless, it's something that will affect more than just a couple of Spider-Man villains. As a result, Tony will still have an impact on the MCU going forward in one way or another. But if anything in that future contains an anti-Avengers initiative, we'll just have to wait and see. And there you have it. How would you go about defeating your favorite Avenger? And do you think Iron Man would stand a fighting chance against them? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content like this every day. Thanks, guys, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye!